Have you ever had that feeling? You know, that exhilarating but also slightly scary feeling of pushing boundaries?
Oh, absolutely.
Maybe it's in your personal life, you know, testing the edges of a relationship, or maybe just watching society grappling with these massive challenges, political stuff, the environment, inequality, things that just seem, well, limitless. Like there are no easy answers, no real guardrails.
Right. It feels like we just keep pushing, keep going sometimes.
Exactly. As if the limits just don't apply. But what actually happens when we ignore those limits? You know, when we really decide they don't matter for us or for a certain situation.
Yeah, the consequences can be, well, pretty profound, can't they?
That's what we're exploring today. Today, we're taking a deep dive into a really, really thought-provoking source that tackles exactly this critical question.
Okay.
It's an excerpt from a spiritual lecture by Mayse Braga. She's a well-known speaker in the Spiritist tradition that's a spiritual philosophy, exploring things like reincarnation, mediumship, our whole evolutionary journey.
Right. I'm familiar with Spiritism. It's got some deep concepts.
It really does. And her lecture, it's titled A Profecia de Mayse Braga, O limite que você ignora e que está destruindo sua alma palestra espírita. Quite a title uploaded on the YouTube channel, O Consolador. And it's not just a talk, you know, it's like this rich tapestry woven from personal stories, really poignant historical reflections, and these deep spiritual insights. And it all centers around the seemingly simple idea, limits.
Yeah, it sounds simple, but it's incredibly complex when you start digging into it.
Exactly.
And what's really powerful about Mayse Braga's approach, I think, is how she weaves together all these different threads. You know, she moves from ancient philosophy to really pressing modern issues, from like individual spiritual journeys to the big sweep of human history.
Yeah, seamlessly.
And her aim, which is really our mission today too, isn't just to say what limits are, but to dig deep into why they're so crucial for our growth, our relationships, even our spiritual evolution across lifetimes. So our goal here is to kind of extract these powerful nuggets of wisdom, clarify what they mean, and really help you, the listener, connect the dots. Offer maybe a fresh perspective on boundaries you hadn't quite considered before.
So what does this actually mean for you in your day-to-day life? Maybe you're navigating tricky personal relationships or grappling with those big societal issues that just feel overwhelming sometimes. Or maybe you're just curious about, you know, the deeper mechanics of how things work, your place in it all. Well, this deep dive, I think it promises some serious aha moments.
I think so too.
Get ready to reconsider the power, often sort of counterintuitive power of saying no. Both the no we need to say to ourselves for self-discipline, right?
Yeah, that's a big one.
And the no we sometimes have to say to others to protect our boundaries, maintain respect. It's really about finding freedom and purpose, not feeling confined, by understanding limits better. So Mayse Braga's lecture kicks off with this really interesting, almost metaphorical introduction to a community. She calls them affectionately the Meninos de Sábado, which translates literally to the Saturday Boys.
Okay.
And it's presented as this kind of evocative analogy for a group that's genuinely dedicated to self-improvement, to real spiritual growth. It suggests a chosen path, you know, one of conscious effort.
A deliberate choice.
Yeah, and it seems like a journey that a lot of people feel drawn to. And as you listen, you might find yourself asking, okay, what does it actually take to be one of these Meninos de Sábado, to get on that kind of path of self-transformation?
Right, what's the real commitment involved? The hidden dedication?
Exactly. What's the unspoken contract behind it all?
Yeah.
And she shares this very relatable thing about that yearning for authenticity. She talks about how people from all over Brazil, even internationally, really want to meet the original Meninos de Sábado in Brasilia.
The source, yeah.
Right. She likens them to the Bamba of old, that's a Brazilian term for it, like the genuine article, the real deal.
Ah, okay. Not just someone following along.
Exactly. Not an imitation. And people apparently stop her in the street, all hopeful, asking, can I be a Menino de Sábado?
Wow.
It really speaks to that universal longing we have, doesn't it? For meaning, for authenticity, for belonging to something noble, maybe?
Definitely. That desire to embody an ideal, it's powerful. And a key insight that Mayse Braga brings out here is this idea of the implied contract. The unspoken but really rigorous requirements that come with wanting that title.
It's not just showing up.
Not at all. She explains that if she were asked directly, how do I become one? She'd have to lay out the real prerequisites. And they're not trivial. It's not just about the name. It's a profound internal shift.
Like what?
Well, she says things like, You have to change your life for the better. You have to be genuine. You have to be charitable. And then she adds, and a whole bunch of other things that the ever-present spiritual friends remind us we should be.
Wow. So it's a whole life commitment.
Exactly. And this makes us think, doesn't it? Are we often drawn to the idea of transformation, the cool title, the enlightened vibe, the community, without fully grasping or maybe even wanting to commit to the discipline and the limits it actually demands?
That's a really good question.
It's like the romantic notion is appealing, but the actual hard work, maybe less so.
I think we absolutely do that, don't we? It's like craving the glory of the finish line without appreciating the sheer grit of running the marathon.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
It's like wanting to be a master chef, but, not wanting to chop onions for hours or, God forbid, clean the kitchen afterwards.
Right. We want the result without the process.
We want the destination, the recognition, the shiny end result of personal growth without fully signing up for the journey itself. All the rigorous self-imposed limits, the mundane bits, the uncomfortable moments.
It really highlights that difference between just aspiring to something and genuinely committing to it.
It really does. Now, things get really interesting here. Mayse Braga delves into this deeply spiritual belief, the idea of pre-incarnation choices.
Ah, yes. The idea that we choose aspects of our lives before we're born.
Exactly. Imagine that, choosing your whole life setup, the basic framework before you even get here, before you take your first breath on Earth.
It's a massive concept.
Yeah.
Completely reframes how you see your circumstances, doesn't it?
Totally. Suddenly, it's not just random chance, it's purposeful design. And she describes this pre-birth decision process almost humorously, like a kind of sales pitch before coming to Earth.
A sales pitch. Yeah.
She paints this picture where the really enticing details like, hey, there's Disney, were highlighted to appeal to the eager soul.
Okay, I can see that.
But maybe the harder parts, the challenges, the specific limits we'd face, were kind of rushed through, downplayed a bit so we'd still sign up.
Gloss over the fine print.
Exactly. And then you, as a soul, made these crucial choices. You picked your future family, parents, spouse, and she jokes 2, 3, or 4 spouses, no problem, you'll explain later, acknowledging how complex relationships can be across lifetime.
Buckles.
Right.
The karmic entanglements.
And your children, or maybe people you're destined to guide or tutor, it's this profound idea that these key connections aren't accidents, they're part of a plan.
Yeah. And putting this in the bigger picture, Mayse Braga emphasizes that the most significant choice we made in this pre-life plan was the task.
The task.
Yes. And the task is always our modification for the better. Our spiritual growth, basically.
Ah, okay. Our evolution.
Exactly. So this implies that even before birth, we set our own spiritual limits and goals for evolving, for refining our character.
So we're setting our own curriculum.
In a way, yes. Earth, in this view, isn't just a physical place, it's a school, a dynamic crucible for growth. And our relationships, struggles, triumphs, that's the curriculum designed to help us learn, overcome flaws, and evolve.
Wow.
So it makes you wonder, how much of our current struggles, the difficult relationships we have, are tied to these tasks we actually set for ourselves? And how do those tasks define the limits of our spiritual growth right now?
That's heavy.
It is. But the takeaway is powerful. Challenges aren't random bad luck. They're part of a chosen curriculum for self-evolution, a step towards that modification for the better.
It shifts you from feeling like a victim to seeing purpose.
Precisely. Are we living up to the spiritual contract we signed? Or are we pushing against the very limits we designed for our own good?
It's a really powerful thought, isn't it? That you might have actually, in some way, signed up for all this. The good, the bad, the tough stuff, the wins. It definitely changes how you look at those hard days, makes them less like random misfortune and more like fulfilling a self-chosen purpose.
Right. A learning opportunity.
Yeah. It turns struggle into a potential lesson, a step towards that ultimate goal. It gives a deeper meaning to resilience, maybe reminding us we already have the tools to handle the paths we chose. So the lecture then makes this beautiful transition, moving from our sort of personal spiritual contracts to the teachings of, well, one of history's most influential figures.
Okay.
It reminds us that even Jesus, described here as the perfect soul, understood and actively taught about setting limits.
Which Might seem counterintuitive at first, right? You think of boundless love.
Exactly. But this wasn't about arbitrary restriction. It was about protection, about emotional and spiritual hygiene, really, enabling progress for himself and his followers.
Makes sense. Necessary boundaries.
And Mayse Braga tells this specific story about Jesus' advice to his disciples when he sent them out in pairs. He told them, if you go to a city or a house and you're not welcomed if your message is rejected or met with hostility, you should take off the sandals they were wearing, knock one against the other to remove the dust from the city where they had not been well received.
Remove the dust. Seems symbolic.
Very symbolic.
Yeah, the symbolism there is really profound, isn't it? He wanted them, literally and figuratively, to forget what had passed and go to the next city, to start anew.
Let it go.
Exactly. It was a clear limit against carrying resentment, grievance, things they were taking from one place to another, because that negativity would inevitably taint their message of light and love.
Right. It would weigh them down.
Totally. It's a timeless lesson in emotional hygiene, spiritual discernment. He was teaching them not to cling to rejection, to shed it like dust, and move forward with a clean slate, preserving the purity of their mission.
It's like a spiritual boundary against holding on to negativity.
Because carrying that dust from past rejections stops you from being truly present and effective in whatever comes next.
Makes you think, doesn't it? How much dust are you carrying around from past disappointments or conflicts?
Yeah, we all do it to some extent.
And this isn't just some ancient story. It feels like a blueprint for emotional freedom today. A practical guide for releasing what doesn't serve you and walking lighter into the next thing, a new job, relationship, even just the next difficult conversation.
Don't let the past define your present or future. That's the core of it.
Okay, so from Jesus' wisdom on shedding emotional baggage, we're then invited to look at the bigger picture of his time. The lecture takes us back to that era, painting this really vivid picture of Roman rule, which was starkly defined by, as she puts it, cruelty without limits.
This sets the stage for how radical his teachings actually were.
Absolutely, because in that time, human life, especially women's lives, held very little value.
A brutal hierarchy.
Mayse Braga uses this grim but incredibly telling example of a caravan arriving at a well for water. It shows the hierarchy perfectly.
How so?
Well, the order of drinking was strict. First, the soldiers drink, then the lords, then their horses, then the camels, then the dogs.
Wow.
And only after all of them, only then were the women in the caravan allowed to drink. That's heartbreaking. Just sheer dehumanization. A total lack of limits on devaluing people. And when you see it in that context, Jesus' actions were just revolutionary.
Yeah.
He consciously, deliberately brings women into the gospel. That was unprecedented. It completely challenged the norms.
Giving them a voice, a presence.
Exactly. Figures like his mother Mary, sure, but then Mary Magdalene, Martha, Joanna the wife of Chuza, and others. He actively exalts the feminine figure, not just as mothers, but as blessed, tutored ones who would do much for the gospel.
Recognizing their inherent worth, their spiritual capacity.
Yes, and their active role. This highlights a profound reestablishment of human value. He was placing strict limits on that societal oppression and discrimination that had just run wild.
He wasn't just teaching abstract ideas. He was actively dismantling those harmful structures by living differently.
Precisely, radical inclusivity.
And Mayse Braga adds this detail, mentioning how women in the House of the Way, those early Christian communities, dedicated themselves to practical loving action.
Not just passive listeners. Not at all. They were sewing and mending clothes for poor children, making sure they weren't naked in the streets. It wasn't just abstract spiritual talk. It was embodying that teaching through concrete acts of compassion.
Real service.
Often led by the very people society had devalued and placed, well, without limits at the bottom of the pile. It shows the power of recognizing inherent worth. This historical backdrop then leads us, unfortunately, to a really painful modern example of unchecked power and ego, and the terrible consequences when boundaries are ignored, especially for women, the awful reality of feminicide.
Yeah, a sign that some lessons are still stubbornly unlearned.
It really is. The speaker points out that women generally have no limit to the love they can distribute and spread. Their capacity for affection, empathy, it often seems endless. But tragically, and with such heartbreaking irony, many lose their own lives, precisely when they try to set necessary limits. When they find the courage to say no to former partners, to relationships that have become toxic or dangerous.
It's horrific. Punished for setting a boundary.
Exactly. She mentions a new feminicide law in Brazil, and the first conviction under it, a man sentenced to 43 years for killing his ex-partner right in front of their children.
The brutality.
Yeah.
The complete disregard for life. It's sickening.
And the statistics she gives are just stark. 34 women murdered in Brasilia 2 years ago, 23 last year, 2 already this year early on.
It's an ongoing crisis.
It is, and she stresses with such urgency, this cannot continue any longer. We have to teach our children and grandchildren total respect for the other. It's a direct plea, a call to action against this erosion of basic decency.
And the core issue here, the fundamental principle Mayse Braga brings out, is something so basic we seem to keep forgetting it. When my right ends, the other's right begins.
Such a simple concept.
It is, and it makes you ask, why do we struggle so much with this basic mutual respect?
Yeah.
The lecture hammers home that violating this essential limit has severe consequences, not just in some future life, but right here, in this very one. The undeniable point is that individual moral failures, born from an ego that refuses limits, refuses to acknowledge the other's rights, don't just affect the individual, they cascade into collective tragedies.
Our personal boundaries are like society's guardrails.
Exactly. Yeah. And when they crumble, the cost is just immeasurable. It directly connects that limitless personal ego to devastating societal outcomes. Individual moral failures add up.
And this isn't just a grim statistic from somewhere else. It's a stark reminder for all of us why understanding and respecting limits is literally life and death. It's the bedrock of a civilized society. And it's something you, as a listener, can actively influence. Teach the next generation that crucial understanding of where your rights end and another's begin. Foster empathy from the start. The lecture then shifts again, taking us to another really poignant historical moment. It shows how even noble intentions, when they lose all sense of limits, can collapse into just horrific chaos. The French Revolution.
Ah, yes. A classic example of ideals gone wrong.
Absolutely. The initial ideals were beautiful, weren't they? Revolutionary in their power, equality, liberty, fraternity.
And our desire for fairness.
The goal was to overthrow the powerful Louises, the monarchy, seen as indifferent, even cruel, to the people suffering, to build a fairer society.
A noble aim.
But then, as the speaker grimly recounts, the guillotine ran loose. It became this instrument of indiscriminate terror.
Right. Things spiraled out of control.
Tragically, there were just no limits for those who sought revenge. People falsely denounced neighbors, enemies, sending countless innocent people to their deaths, all supposedly in the name of revolutionary justice.
The pursuit of justice became its own kind of terror. It consumed itself.
Exactly. And Mayse Braga highlights this powerful scene from the film Danton, showing the climax of that period. Danton, a key revolutionary, finds himself condemned to the guillotine, a victim of the very system he helped create.
The irony.
Yeah. And as he faces death, he sees Robespierre, his former friend and comrade, hiding in a window, and Danton shouts this chilling prophecy, "Today it's me, tomorrow it will be you."
Wow. And was he right?
He was. History shows Robespierre's own head rolled shortly after, ending the reign of terror. It's just such a vivid, tragic example of how that cycle of vengeance, once you let it run without limits, inevitably consumes everyone, even its creators.
And the bigger picture here, as the speaker states so profoundly, is when our egoism has no limit, the consequences are very serious. It shows how even pursuing justice, or what seems like justice, can become this destructive, self-consuming force if there are no internal or external boundaries. The revolution, born from wanting freedom, became its own oppressor when people shed all limits on their actions, their resentments, their thirst for revenge.
It's a stark lesson. Even the noblest cause can be corrupted by unchecked human nature.
Yeah. External change is so fragile without that internal discipline, those self-imposed limits.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many big movements in history, started with the best intentions, wanting good things, have ultimately fallen prey to this same human tendency, removing limits on revenge or power.
It's a timeless cautionary tale, really.
Yeah.
For anyone seeking change, it takes more than passion. It takes profound self-awareness and limits.
And then the lecture brings us to, well, maybe the most horrifying modern example of humanity just failing to learn from the past. Ignoring limits on a global, systemic scale, World War II.
Yeah, the ultimate cost of unbridled hatred and power.
It's described so starkly as 13 years of madness, a time when Cetan men, driven by this ideology of supremacy, decided they would dominate the planet and exterminate an entire people.
Gelling.
It began with the Jewish people, then just terrifyingly efficiently, extended to intellectuals, the disabled, and those who had no one to defend them. It was systematic, calculated eradication, an ideology with no moral limits, no recognition of human value for those deemed undesirable.
The scale is just incomprehensible.
The numbers alone tell part of the story. 60 million people died. Humanity essentially had to start from scratch afterwards, picking up the pieces.
Utter devastation.
Yet the speaker laments, with this real sense of disappointment, we learned practically nothing, because today we have wars, immense difficulty in understanding the other.
It's sobering, isn't it? Immense suffering doesn't automatically create wisdom. The lessons often just don't stick. We repeat the cycles. And what's powerful here is how Mayse Braga connects this awful past to our present challenges through a very personal story rooted in that spiritist idea of reincarnation.
Okay.
She mentions people asking why they reincarnated in Brazil, sometimes joking about past lives as slaves or slave owners, maybe explaining current difficulties like a karmic debt.
Right.
But then she shares this profound story about Dona Irene, a psychic, the founder of her community, described as an extraordinary soul, powerful mediumship. In a moment of vulnerability, when Dona Irene was elderly and unwell, she had this vision. She recognized the speaker, Mayse Braga, as someone who had served her in a past life, just bringing her a simple glass of water. A gesture of service.
Wow.
And Dona Irene stopped the conversation right there, quoting the spiritual author Andre Luis, saying, "Never try to remove the tombstone because it always smells bad."
Meaning, don't dig up the past.
Exactly. It's a powerful metaphor for leaving past lives, past karmic debts buried. Don't dwell on them. Don't try to uncover all the specific details, which can be overwhelming or even misleading. Focus on now.
Yeah.
So this makes you ask, are we really doomed to just repeat these painful patterns forever?
Yeah.
History, personal struggles.
Yeah, it can feel that way sometimes.
But the emphasis here is different. She says, none of us was better than we are now in past lives. We are living our best.
Our best, even with all our flaws.
Yes. It's not saying we're perfect or absolving past wrongs. It's a call to recognize our current capacity for good, for learning, for real transformation in this life. The core message is that the work of putting limits on our eternal soul is always a great learning.
So the limits help us grow now.
Precisely. It's through these self-imposed boundaries, the conscious choices to learn and evolve now, that we genuinely progress and break free from old patterns. The journey is always forward, striving for better.
That's a powerful way to look at it. It challenges you, the listener, to see your present life not as punishment, but as the peak of your current spiritual journey.
An opportunity.
An opportunity to learn, grow, and finally embrace those limits that allow for real progress and freedom. It invites this compassionate acceptance of who you are right now as your best self, capable of change now. Okay, so bringing these huge historical and spiritual ideas right down to our everyday lives. Let's talk about the place where limits are maybe most immediate and crucial: parenting and family dynamics.
Right, the domestic arena.
Mayse Braga draws this really poignant contrast between past generations and today's challenges. She highlights a significant and often pretty troubling shift in authority and discipline within the home.
Things have definitely changed.
She recalls being 67 herself, a time when, in her generation, father and mother didn't need to set limits with long explanations or rule books. Their presence, their look was often enough.
That unspoken understanding.
She describes it so powerfully. They would look, and in the eyes of your father and mother, between loving and disciplining was your limit. Parents, she says, had no qualms, saying firmly, "This is not done, that's not how it's done," and those words carried weight, were generally accepted.
A natural deference, respect for authority born out of love.
Yeah, it established boundaries implicitly. But today, she observes this distressing reversal. You see appalling situations, fathers and mothers who are hostages to their children.
Hostages, that's a strong word.
It is, but she backs it up with this vivid, almost shocking story from a shopping mall. She saw a 6-year-old boy just verbally abusing his mother, calling her old and fat right there in public. No fear.
Oh, wow. That's awful.
The mother, clearly at her wit's end, totally humiliated, took the child behind a pillar, out of sight, and quietly but firmly spanked him on the leg. And the speaker admits, really candidly, that made me happy, I swear to God.
Happy? Why?
Not out of cruelty, she explains, but because the boy, who was being falsely courageous only because he thought there'd be no consequences, he immediately shrunk back, quieted down, His fake bravado just vanished when a clear limit was finally enforced.
Okay. The immediate impact of a clear boundary. That makes sense. Her observation that the false brave one only confronts you when he is sure there will be no result for him, that highlights a deep psychological truth, doesn't it?
Yeah, consequences are necessary.
Especially with kids. Without clear repercussions for unacceptable behavior, they'll just keep pushing boundaries, testing the system indefinitely. True humility, respect, often comes back when the limit is clear and consistently upheld. It's fundamental for character. Understanding actions have consequences.
So this raises a critical question for you, listening. How are you navigating that tricky balance of love and discipline in your own family or relationship?
It's a constant negotiation.
Are you setting clear limits? Are they respected? Or are you maybe inadvertently becoming a bit of a hostage yourself, allowing respect in order to slowly erode in your most intimate space? And the lecture argues strongly that this lack of limits at home isn't just a family problem. It spills over inevitably into every part of life with serious consequences for society.
Foundational, isn't it? Affects the whole fabric.
If you don't set limits inside your home, she warns, there will be no limits at school, no limits on the street, no limits in your child's relationship with friends. And this isn't new, she says. Her daughter Mariana, now 41, had a 4-year-old classmate nearly 40 years ago who was already known as horrors in class. Disruptive even then.
Wow. So it's a long-standing pattern.
Seems like it. And she tells another powerful story illustrating this. The school owner, desperate, called this disruptive kid's father in. While the father is listening to the complaints, the 4-year-old, with zero apparent respect, openly defies his dad, saying, "Dad, don't pay attention to him, pay attention to me."
At 4 years old? Oh my.
Right. And then, to the school owner's utter despair, the father offers his son a Playmobil, an expensive toy back then, just to be quiet.
Oh no. Rewarding the bad behavior.
Exactly. It completely undermined the school's authority, and worse, taught the child this devastating lesson. Act out and you get rewarded. No negative consequences, just positive reinforcement for being disruptive.
And connecting this to the bigger picture, the speaker issues this stark warning. We will live the consequences, I have no doubt. Humanity will not approve. We will have serious consequences as a society.
How does she connect those dots?
She explains that children who challenge and disrespect parents and authority figures grow into adults who challenge and disrespect society, lacking that internal compass. The erosion starts at home and spreads outwards.
Makes sense. She also laments losing traditions, like taking a blessing from parents, a gesture of respect in Brazilian culture. She saw it not as diminishing, but as fostering reverence and connection.
Yeah, those small rituals can mean a lot.
And she misses simpler things, like family meals where people lingered, talked, made those little bread balls from the inside of the loaf, just enjoying being together. Those traditions also built connection, order, respect, a natural rhythm we've kind of lost.
And this raises that question about the shift in parental roles, doesn't it? The old way was clear. Parents were parents. Guides, mentors, disciplinarians.
Right, not just friends.
But today, she observes, kids often treat parents as if they were the worst colleagues, with no basic courtesy. This lack of respect, rudeness, lack of education, especially mixed with what she calls imbalances and problems from other lives.
Spiritual dimension.
It can lead to this dangerous mindset. I have a right to get what I want, for better or for worse. And that's a slippery slope towards theft, violence, disregarding others completely.
So what's the core principle?
She defines the purpose of limits so clearly. Limit is so that the person knows, I will not cross here because I will be hurting my fellow man. And if my fellow man is a family member, even worse. It's about protecting others from our unchecked desires, developing a moral compass.
It really feels like a powerful call to action for you, listening. Reevaluate how limits are taught and reinforced in your own life, your own spheres. Our actions or inactions today are shaping tomorrow's society. It needs conscious effort. Now, the lecture also subtly brings in another vital limit, one we often overlook, but it's profoundly impactful, personally and spiritually.
Okay, what's that?
The capacity for forgiveness and the consequences of not embracing it. It's like a limit we impose on our own healing.
Forgiveness, that's a big one. Often difficult.
Very. She talks about the difficulty of reuniting with people we might have avoided for 800, 1,000 years, suggesting that spiritual dimension makes current relationships so complicated.
Those deep karmic connections again.
Right. And she states pretty bluntly that forgiveness is something very serious that people are not using. Instead, she sees resentment, grievance being preferred, even nurtured, sometimes even perpetuated by therapy that focuses on past harms but doesn't lead to true, liberating forgiveness.
Holding on to grudges instead of releasing them.
Exactly. And she tells this story about a friend's revolutionary therapy about 20 years ago. It involved tearing a pillow, which the friend was told to imagine was her father, who she had major issues with, into 1,000 pieces.
Pillow therapy. Okay. Cathartic, maybe.
That was the idea. She shredded the pillow, feathers flying, hoping for release. But later, the friend admitted, very honestly, it didn't help at all, because when I faced my father, I didn't remember the shredded pillow. I remembered everything I wanted to ask him about why our relationship was so complicated.
Wow. So the external act didn't fix the internal problem?
Not at all. The deep pain, the inability to set a limit on holding on to that pain, it was all still there.
This makes you wonder, doesn't it? Does modern society sometimes offer these external shortcuts, these symbolic fixes for internal work that only we can actually do?
That's a great point.
Forgiveness, in this light, becomes this profound, self-imposed limit on holding on to pain, resentment, grievance. And that internal boundary is crucial for real spiritual progress and healing. It frees us from the past rather than just letting us vent anger symbolically in ways that don't truly resolve anything.
It's about a conscious choice to release, to move forward, liberating ourselves, not just the other person. So for you, the listener, what pillows might you be shredding? Hoping for some magic release from old hurts, when what's really needed might be a direct conversation facing the past. Or maybe, most profoundly, that internal decision to let go of resentment and truly forgive.
Where are you choosing to set your own emotional limits to allow yourself to heal? That's the real question.
Okay, so that theme of self-interest we saw in families and history, it extends pretty starkly into international relations and diplomacy too, revealing another kind of limit, or maybe a persistent lack of limits, that really impacts humanity.
The global stage. Yeah, self-interest often runs rampant there.
Mayse Braga critiques what she calls false diplomacy, where despite all the fancy talk of cooperation, everyone only thinks of themselves.
That sounds familiar, unfortunately.
And she fondly recalls Vinicius de Moraes, the famous Brazilian poet, composer, diplomat, a respected intellectual.
A cultural giant.
Apparently, he got so bored and disheartened by the self-serving diplomatic talk that went nowhere, just posturing, that he famously excused himself from one meeting, saying he was just popping out for a little coffee.
Chuckles. Okay.
And he never returned. He chose instead to dedicate his life to music and poetry, to try and change the world differently through art and beauty, rather than through stagnant negotiations that ignored real human needs.
Wow. That's quite a statement.
Yeah.
It really speaks to how his intelligence and sensibility did not allow him to get carried away by that empty talk, as the source puts it.
Yeah, he set a boundary.
He set a personal limit on what he'd engage with, where he'd invest his energy. It really speaks to the importance of discerning where you put your energy, recognizing when a situation is just draining, unproductive, because there are no limits on self-interest. His choice was to withdraw from that space and redirect his spirit towards avenues where he could make a real difference.
It does make you think, doesn't it? Are you letting conversations or situations without ethical limits on self-interest just drain your energy, your time, your soul?
Yeah. Maybe it's time for a coffee break from those things.
Find a more authentic way to contribute, something aligned with your own integrity, right? Set limits on what consumes your spirit. The lecture then goes even deeper, moving into the spiritual realm itself, revealing that limits exist even in the afterlife, especially around connecting with loved ones who've passed on.
Okay, so even love has boundaries there, dictated by spiritual progress.
That seems to be the idea. Mayse Braga describes moments maybe when we're out of the body after passing, where we might eagerly ask, "Where's so-and-so? I was sure I'd find him."
That natural desire to reunite.
But then we might be told, gently but firmly, that so-and-so has advanced a bit more and is not on the same level of thought or emotion as ours.
A separation based on energetic vibration, spiritual evolution, not a lack of love.
Right. Reunions are possible, she says, but often fleeting, governed by these energy differences. You will see so-and-so, but you will stay with him for 5 minutes, 10 minutes at most.
Just a brief encounter.
You might embrace, share joy, think, wow, we met again. But then suddenly, maybe a shortness of breath or discomfort makes you realize, very clearly, you cannot be there. It's not your place for long. Your energy just isn't compatible with that higher sphere yet.
Not punishment, just different frequencies, essentially.
Yeah.
A natural consequence of different spiritual stages. And this brings up that question of spiritual compatibility, the natural progression of souls. The speaker mentions the spiritual author André Louise, whose accounts of the spiritual world came through the medium Chico Xavier.
Yes, very influential in Spiritism.
André Louise's mother, she explains, materialized to visit him, but lived on a higher sphere. She had evolved beyond his level at that time. This confirms that even immense love doesn't just erase the energetic limits, the distinct evolutionary paths between different spiritual planes.
Each soul progresses individually.
Exactly. Setting its own limits for growth. Highly individualized journeys. But Mayse Braga does offer reassurance.
Yeah.
We will absolutely meet our families again, just not in the way we sometimes imagine, because each one followed their path before us. Each one makes their own journey.
That's comforting, but also realistic about individual growth. Now, there's a really powerful story that illustrates this idea of spiritual limits and maybe expanded purpose. Mayse Braga shares a narrative from Humberto de Campos, another spirit communicating through Chico Xavier, about Peter right after his crucifixion.
Okay, Peter arriving in the spiritual world.
Exactly. Imagine him just martyred, probably expecting some well-deserved rest. Jesus appears, but then surprisingly says, "Pedro, my son, rest," and starts to walk away.
Rest, okay.
But then Jesus invites him to dive back into the flesh, to return to earth, to comfort the Christians being persecuted, martyred in the circuses.
Wow. Go back.
Yeah.
Right after arriving.
Yeah. Peter, understandably, thinks twice. He just got there. But then, realizing his true calling, his ongoing mission, he walks quickly behind Christ, choosing active service over personal rest.
That's incredible. It illustrates such a crucial point. Limits aren't about just stopping, staying in a corner waiting. It's a call to continued work, active service, even in the spiritual realm.
Yeah, the work doesn't necessarily end.
Peter chose to transcend his personal desire for rest. He embraced a higher spiritual task, setting a new limit on his own comfort for the sake of compassion, helping those still struggling.
It shows spiritual evolution often means expanding our limits of service, pushing beyond what feels like our earned rest.
Recognizing our purpose extends beyond personal comfort. That's a big theme.
And Mayse Braga uses this really charming metaphor then about wanting to wait under a mango tree for evolved souls to help us along. But she quickly clarifies what it really means.
Chuckles. The mango tree of spiritual rest. Sounds nice.
It does. She jokes about wanting to just lie under a mango tree in the spirit world and be carried higher by evolved friends and family, kind of bypassing the hard work.
A spiritual shortcut.
Right. She shares stories of her cousin's late wife, and so Erasmo, a founder of her community, who also expressed similar desires. Hold a spot for me, or just let me watch everyone pass by, resting peacefully. It's very human desire, isn't it? For ease, rest, shortcuts.
Absolutely. But the key insight here is about the real limit setting in the spirit world. Mayse Braga gently reminds us, we don't know how long that rest will actually be. Because upon returning to true existence, when we're fully aware spiritually, we will be called upon not to have limits for the work of good.
So rest isn't the final destination.
Not necessarily. We'll be told, courage, let's now help those who are in the body of flesh. It shifts the idea of spiritual rest from passive waiting to active, compassionate service. The work for good is ongoing. And this makes you ask again, why is our time here on Earth, this physical life, so crucial?
Right, why this messy school?
It's described as a stage of self-knowledge and renovation that will take us back to true existence. So the limits we encounter here, the ones we set for our own soul, the challenges, disciplines, boundaries we respect, those are what educate us, point the way towards our evolution. Earth is where we actively grow because of its challenges and limits.
And this whole deep dive into limits really culminates in this powerful, incredibly hopeful idea. Our current life right now is what Mayse Braga calls a golden incarnation.
Golden, meaning?
Meaning it's a prime opportunity, a pivotal moment to grow, surpass past limitations, make a real difference in our spiritual path.
Like uniquely poised for growth.
Exactly. She emphasizes this is the golden incarnation that all of us are having. This is the one to do our best to arrive a little better on the other side of existence. Maybe after many past lessons, this life is perfectly set up to accelerate our progress, break old patterns, make significant strides.
Seize the moment. Put in the effort now.
Right. And she brings in this incredible, heartbreaking, but inspiring story of a 113-year-old Holocaust survivor. Apparently looked a lot like Queen Elizabeth II.
1 of 13. Amazing.
Survived the unimaginable horrors of the concentration camps because she was pregnant, and someone, in an act of profound compassion amidst all that cruelty, protected her because of it.
Wow. Resilience, kindness, even in the darkest places.
Yeah.
Even when limits on barbarity were totally gone for others. And connecting this back, the speaker points out a painful truth that echoes from history right to today. Despite such immense suffering like the Holocaust, humanity often did not learn the lessons. We continue in the same painful situation. Persecutors, selfish, truly evil.
Still repeating the pattern.
Yeah. She even describes modern world leaders who seem to operate without moral limits, as if they not have a soul, just pursuing power. This leads to the sobering conclusion that the simplicity and humility that Jesus speaks to us about, we still have to build. We're far from that ideal.
A long way to go. She mentions Zero Discrimination Day on March 1st, urging us not to be prejudiced or intolerant.
An important reminder.
And she references Pope Francis, calling him extraordinary, highlighting his call for the feminization of the church, a revolutionary idea seeking balance and empowering women.
Facing huge opposition for it, too.
Huge opposition, even within his own faith, people wishing him ill. But despite attacks, speculation about his health, he embodies doing the best in his place, making moments count, showing humility. He even specified a simple wooden coffin for himself.
Accepting his own limits, focusing on spiritual impact, not earthly grandeur.
Exactly.
And this prompts that chilling question again. It seems there is no limit to what negative things we can think in the direction of our fellow man. This boundless negativity, this lack of self-imposed limits on our thoughts and judgments. This is why, she concludes, in a next life, we will still go through many difficulties.
Because our own negativity perpetuates suffering cycles.
Exactly. Our failure to set internal boundaries on negative impulses keeps us stuck. Spiritual progress is tied to our capacity for love, compassion, forgiveness.
It's a really stark reminder, isn't it? What negative limits are you setting, or maybe failing to set, for your own thoughts and judgments about others?
Yeah. Are you contributing to the negativity, or actively choosing to build that humility and simplicity the world needs? It's a challenge to our inner world.
So the lecture closes with maybe one of the most traumatic transformation stories ever told.
Yeah.
Where someone just fundamentally redefines their limits and purpose. Saul, who became Paul.
Ah, yes. The road to Damascus. A pivotal moment.
Absolutely. It's a testament to radical change, divine intervention, the potential within us. Mayse Braga vividly recounts Jesus appearing to Saul, blinding him with such light, so intense it just changed everything. Saul, remember, was this powerful doctor of the law, fiercely persecuting Christians, totally convinced he was right. And now, instantly, he's completely blind, groping along the city walls, horse gone, identity shattered. The last thing he saw was Christ.
A complete shattering of his reality.
Totally. And in this moment of vulnerability, Jesus instructs Ananias, an elderly Christian. Saul was actually going to Damascus to arrest, tells him to find Saul, restore his vision, and give him instructions for his new path.
Well, talk about a turnaround.
Ananias finds Saul, out of charity, placed on a stretcher to sleep. The mighty brought low. And Ananias, in Jesus' name, restores his sight, opening not just his physical eyes, but the path for his total transformation.
And putting this in context, it's clear. The limit for Paul had been found. He wasn't the persecutor anymore. He had to become the harvester of Christ, building the faith he tried to destroy.
A complete 180.
And the speaker illustrates the extreme humbling involved. For 3 years, this once powerful doctor of the law wove carpets in the desert, selling them to eat.
Weaving carpets. From persecutor to that.
Yes, it wasn't just a change of heart. It was a stripping away of the old identity, power, and limits. Embracing a new, divinely guided purpose based on humility, service, faith. A divinely imposed limit redirecting his whole life.
It's incredible. She highly recommends the book Paulo e Estevam, Paul and Stephen, by Chico Xavier and Emmanuel, the Spiritist work. Notes even cardinals read it because the church apparently knew little about their lives before that book.
Interesting. Adds another layer. And here's another fascinating, maybe tragic aspect. Paul's rejection by his own father. Imagine your beloved son telling you, "Father, I believe Jesus is the Son of God," and you, because your heart just can't accept it, have to cast him out.
Oh, heartbreaking.
It shows that embracing your own limits, especially a higher spiritual calling, can mean challenging the limits and beliefs of others, even loved ones. There's often a profound personal cost to transformation.
Paul's story really is such a powerful testament, isn't it? Choosing that higher path often means confronting these deep, personal, familial limits, making uncompromising choices that might alienate you.
Yeah, it's not always easy or comfortable.
She references Acts 9.1 steen, where Jesus tells Ananias about Paul, "I will show him what he must do." That direct divine instruction, it signifies a complete overhaul of Paul's life, purpose, identity.
Old limits shattered, replaced by a new divine framework. A mission superseding everything else. And this raises that critical question for all of us. What happens when our spiritual calling clashes with our ingrained beliefs, our social norms, our family's expectations?
Right. What do you do then?
Paul's journey shows the profound sacrifice, the immense internal shift needed to accept a new set of limits. Limits set not by ego, society, or family, but by a higher, uncompromising purpose. It's about self-surrender, letting go of the familiar, redirecting towards what's truly meaningful.
Aligning with a greater will, even if it demands radical change. So Mayse Braga's lecture really brings us full circle, doesn't it? Connecting these ancient, profound lessons right back to today, to our own personal responsibility in this ongoing spiritual journey. The wisdom of limits is timeless.
Always relevant.
She calls for prayer, not just for the Pope, but for everyone who does not have the happiness he has, the resources he has to be helped. Acknowledging with humility that only God knows the day and hour of our passing. Reminding us of that ultimate limit mortality.
A limit that should inspire us to live with purpose, with compassion. And placing this in the bigger picture, it underlines that universal need for support and compassion, but also for individual effort. The Pope, despite his position, resources, happiness, still faces his own limits mortality, the challenges of his mission.
Right. He's still human.
And his determination to make the best of his time, his simple wish for a wooden coffin, it reflects that profound acceptance of personal limits, focusing on lasting spiritual impact, not earthly grandeur. It's a practical example of living within self-imposed limits for greater good, true power in humility and service. But it circles back to that sobering question. It seems there is no limit to what negative things we can think in the direction of our fellow man. This boundless negativity, our failure to set limits on our thoughts, judgments, actions. This is why, she concludes, in the next life we will still go through many difficulties.
Our internal lack of limits creates future problems.
Exactly. Failing to establish those internal boundaries on negativity perpetuates suffering for us and for others. Our progress is tied to our capacity for love, forgiveness, compassion.
It's such a stark reminder, isn't it? What negative limits are you setting or maybe failing to set for your own thoughts and judgments about others?
Yeah. Are you contributing to the negativity cycle or actively choosing to build that simplicity, that humility the world desperately needs? It challenges our inner landscape, invites a conscious choice to redefine our limits for good. So really what's fascinating from this deep dive into Mayse Braga's lecture is how it just illuminates the sheer complexity of limits, right? They're not just restrictions holding us back.
No, not at all.
They're essential guides for personal growth, for social harmony, and ultimately for our spiritual evolution. We've seen how ignoring them leads to chaos. French Revolution, WWII, family discord, feminicide.
Devastating consequences.
But conversely, embracing them, like the Meninos de Sábado, striving for betterment, or Paul on that road to Damascus, can lead to profound transformation, purposeful living. Limits are like the scaffolding for our spiritual climb, defining our character, directing our journey.
Okay, let's unpack this for you listening. Think about it. From the simple yet profound act of shaking dust off sandals, that symbol of emotional hygiene, to Peter choosing service over rest, to the very personal limits you set, or maybe don't set, in your own home, your relationships. This whole deep dive hammers home that boundaries aren't mainly about being confined.
Right, they're about definition.
Exactly. They're about being defined. They're not about ending something. They're about beginning anew. A fresh start, a clearer purpose, a more authentic path. So what does all this mean for you?
The takeaway question.
What specific limit will you choose to embrace or maybe courageously challenge starting today to really become the Menino de Sábado of your own life, moving intentionally towards your own golden incarnation?
It's a question that definitely invites some deep reflection, doesn't it? And maybe, just maybe, a truly transformative new beginning.